Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Anthony Patch Show, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. And you can find us now at our new home web address of tfrlive.com. Big warm welcome to every one of you out there, wherever you're from. We've got an amazing show lined up again tonight. I'm Kev Baker, and of course the man himself is here, Anthony Patch, and we've got so much big news and good news and strange stuff to get into tonight. You're going to be absolutely blown away. So without me taking up too much of your time, let's bring in the man himself. You can find his work over at anthonypatch.com. He's here. He's on the phone. He's Anthony Patch. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Kev. Thank you very much. We were just about to go on air, and they cut my Skype feed, and so we're on the cell phone. Take it away.
Oh, you know, these things happen, Tony. These things happen, but we don't let them deter us. We 180 it, we take it, we smile about it, and we use it to our advantage. At least we're both here tonight, and we've got massive kind of news because we often speak about the D-Wave. You were the man that introduced me to that. And, well, that has come up this week. Tony, you sent me a video, and I want you to tell your audience what has happened, because for me, this is absolutely massive.
Well, we made the headlines with D-Wave, specifically with Kindred. And are you there?
Yes, I'm here,
Yep.
Tony. I'm here.
All right. I'm sorry. They just cut my computer completely. I lost all my power. Kindred, founded by Geordie Rose, actually one of his partners from D-Wave. She founded it, and you have the notes on her name. But Geordie Rose was making a presentation just recently to Tech Vancouver, and this was posted on the YouTube channel Down the Rabbit Hole. And I want to give credit to him because it appears that the original video from Tech Vancouver from their website has been pulled by Tech Vancouver, and I can't find it, and neither can you anywhere else on the internet. So if people will go to Down the Rabbit Hole, they'll see the original video. We are going to play the audio today. Geordie Rose posted Kev Baker's graphic of myself and Kev Baker talking about, of all things, the Mandela Effect. And that was a recent show that we did. Geordie Rose, of course, was downplaying it and assigning mine and Kev Baker's presentation on it as conspiracy theory, and they were laughing and joking around about it, which is fine. You know, we have no problem with that. They can try to debunk it all they like, but we've put the information out now since about September of 2015 about the Mandela Effect. And the specific thing, just for people who haven't heard it, Kev and I have determined that Geordie Rose's own statement back in 2013 that they were accessing 2 to the 500th power of parallel dimensions with their Model 512 computer back then, and that they were extracting resources, as he put it, from these parallel dimensions. The resources I have assigned as quantum pollution, manifesting as the Mandela Effect, specifically as a psychological operation operating from the sentient world simulation that is in parallel development to D-Wave's own computers in terms of progression of the number of qubits, therefore the progression of model numbers of their computers moved lockstep with the initiation and further development of the sentient world simulation coming out of Purdue University. The point here, folks, is that we have been acknowledged, Kev Baker and myself, by none other than Geordie Rose, founder of D-Wave, and his new company, Kindred, which Kev is going to explain in a few minutes to you as I attempt to reboot my computer. We have risen to the top of the radar screen, if you will. There's a nice big blip that says Kev Baker and Anthony Patch and the Mandela Effect. We do attribute it to D-Wave Computers' activities, which is nothing more than an advanced form of necromancy. And today we are going to talk about not only necromancy, but other forms of communicating with the dead but essentially that is a replication of the Dee and Kelly communications with fallen angels utilizing a alphabet, a numerical language, a spoken and computational process of communicating with the fallen angels, with the dead, to obtain information. And that has to do with mathematics and geometric shapes. The advanced form of that from the late 1500s to the present is all about D-Wave's quantum computers accessing parallel dimensions into near infinity at this point in terms of the number of parallel dimensions. Again, utilizing Geordie Rose's own words from 2013, at that time, 2 to the 500th power of parallel dimensions, extracting resources, and they also have admitted openly that they realize from these other dimensions 10% more power, more energy entering our reality from these parallel dimensions. By their own statements, all I'm doing, all Kev is doing, is reflecting their own statements, their own admonitions, their own technical explanations of how their computers operate. Now, Kev, you go ahead and jump in there. I'm going to try to reboot my computer. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sitting smiling at the thought of Geordie Rose sitting there, you know, with his slippers on, listening to Freaky Friday and Anthony Patch talking about his machine. But all joking aside, when I play this clip, he doesn't deny the fact that all of these other dimensions are there. No. He merely says we took his idea and we ran with it. So you're not here to listen to me. Let's listen to the man himself. And remember, it was him that said it was like standing at an altar to an alien god. Standing by his D-Wave, you can hear a heartbeat inside it. Well, this is what he said, like Anthony said, at a recent presentation to all his peers in Vancouver.
So my previous company was D-Wave. I'll just show you a couple things. We built what are still the world's only quantum computers that you can buy. And the company, D-Wave, has been doing this. Thanks. I didn't really have much to do with it, but, you know, so this is one of them. This is one of the processors. And a lot of interesting things happened to me over the years there. I got sent pajamas, a whole bunch of stuff. You know, there's lots of interesting things that happen when you build something like a quantum computer. But just as an aside, because I thought it was funny, one of the interesting things that's happened from the D-Wave story is there's this gigantic conspiracy that's arisen on the internet that goes like this. So D-Wave builds quantum computers. The way that they work, if you know how this works, is one of the interpretations is that you tap into these parallel universes and they do computations. Sounds really weird. But what's happened is this idea has been hijacked to describe something called the Mandela Effect, which is this thing where the past changes. So think about something you know to be true from the past. And then imagine you went out on the internet and you can't find it at all. It's not there. It doesn't match with your experience. So these people think that D-Wave is responsible, and CERN. And of course, the quantum key to the abyss factors into it somehow. I'm not exactly sure how.
Because I titled it that way, Geordie. That's how it factors into it. But, you know, there he is, bigging up his achievements. And they are great scientific achievements, what he has done in the past with D-Wave. Did he choose to speak about the fact that they've got 2,048 qubits working together, going to other dimensions? No. Did he mention the fact that he's got customers like Google, NASA, the NSA, stuff like that? No. Did he highlight any of the achievements he could have? So why on earth would he, in front of all his peers, when talking about D-Wave before moving into a presentation about Kindred, why would he choose to bring up a video featuring Anthony Patch, Freaky Friday, and, as he says, the key to, or the quantum key to the abyss? Did you notice as well how he never explained fully what the Mandela Effect was? And I've got a theory that because he was at the start of his presentation, and he knows fine well this Mandela Effects, whatever they are, they're being experienced by so many people. And if he had brought up mirror, mirror on the wall, I imagine there'd be a percentage of that room would be sitting and they would be having their minds blown. It would have derailed everything he was about to speak about. But why did he choose to bring that up? That in itself should tell you that we are definitely onto something. But like he himself said there, folks, he's not D-Wave anymore. And he even admitted something that I've said all along. When it came to creating the actual quantum computer, I don't know how much of his brain power was used. He was more of the money man. Now he left D-Wave with somebody called Suzanne Gilbert. She's the brains here. And they set up something called Kindred AI. And Kindred AI, their own mission statement from their website, this is enough that's like something out of some kind of sci-fi film, because it says, build machines with human-like intelligence. The company's central thesis is that human-like intelligence requires a human-like body. Since its founding in 2014, Kindred has been exploring and engineering systems that enable robots to understand and participate in our world, with the ultimate goal of enabling a future where intelligent machines work together with people to create abundance shared by all. They're talking about AI-controlled robots. There's a couple of quotes I want to go to here, and basically what they think, or they're thinking behind Kindred AI, is that to have one of these artificially general intelligence, not the ones that play AlphaGo or the chatbots that are stored on computers, but an actual artificial general intelligence that's thinking like a human, what they need to do is they need to let it experience the real world. They talk about how humans, we grow up, we're infants, we're taking in through our senses, sight, smell, sound, stuff like that. And all of that has side effects. And this is not me saying this is Geordie Rose again, because he says the side effects of growing up in the real world are what make us conscious and cognitive. So that is the idea here. They're building robots at their company that will go out into the real world. There's one right now called the Orb. It's contained within a hexagonal structure, and it's just like one of these mechanical arms, right? But when it sits in the warehouse with all the other human workers around it, it's got cameras and sensors on it. It's got microphones and stuff like that. And it's learning all the time by watching the other employees in the warehouse while it's doing its tasks itself. Now, Tony, we spoke about this just before the show. I mean, this company, this is, for me, just as important as the D-Wave is, because this is the next step on, isn't it?
It really is, and I'm going to let you elaborate on that. The Kindred, people will understand that comes from biblical scripture, kindred spirits. So that is a starting point, is an acknowledgement, is a confirmation that they are practicing necromancy, that they are communicating with the dead. And there are many forms of necromancy, and we'll go into that after the first break. If you go to my Entangled magazine, the June and July issues, we talk about necromancy in Entangled magazine. And we'll review a little bit of that on the show later on. But Kindred has everything to do with obtaining information from the other side, forbidden information, information that we were never intended to be privy to. So, Kev, go ahead. I'm still playing with the computer. I want to tell you one thing. My computer is up and running right now, but my screensaver, which had a picture of Jesus Christ on it, because I am a Christian, and you guys are dealing with... Okay, I'm going to say it right here. Let me just go off track. Okay? You guys aren't scaring me. Geordie Rose, Elon Musk, Eric Ladazinski, Jeff Bezos, you guys are all in bed together. And you want to play games, that's fine. I have no fear. I'm indwelt with the Holy Spirit. Jesus Christ and his full armor covers me. I don't want to go to battle with you guys. Your battle is not with me. Your battle is with Jesus Christ and with God. If you want to play these games, go right ahead. But it's not me that is your enemy. I'm praying for your souls. Do you understand that? I'm not your enemy. But likewise, you're not scaring me. You can do whatever you want. I can die only one time. And you know what? My soul is already saved, and I get to go to heaven. I don't know where you guys are going for sure, because I don't know your soul and I don't know your heart, but your fruits tell me that you're playing with the dead, you're playing with Satan, you're worshiping Satan, and for your own souls, you better back off, because he's coming after you, and he's going to smack you down hard. And you have a simple choice. You can go to light or you can go to the dark. You can go with Jesus Christ or you can go with Satan. If you want to play games with Satan, you're going to end up in Hades. Simple as that. Kev, take it away.
Well, these dudes are definitely playing with the dark one, Tony. I'll try and reconnect with you while I just give a couple of quotes from our friend, Geordie. So then, folks, Tony's right, and just listening to Tony speaking there and actually looking at the technology that they're building here, we have spoken before of something called a homunculus. Now, this is where they basically create some kind of avatar where it's going to be the home or the shell for some disembodied spirit. And when you think of these robots that they're building, they're basically going to be in, well, no better terms, they're built to be like humans. There we go. You're back, Anthony.
Yeah, they cut my cell phone.
Well, I'll go into this quote here, right? It says, our founding belief was that in order to make real progress towards the original objectives of AI, you needed to start by grounding your ideas in the physical world, Rose says. And that means robots, and robots with sensors that can look around, touch, hear the world that surrounds them. This first body approach to AI is based on a theory that they call embodied cognition, which suggests that the interplay between our brain, body, and the physical world is what produces elements of consciousness and the ability to reason. Without understanding how the brain developed to control the body and guide functions like locomotion and visual processing, the theory goes, we may never be able to reproduce it artificially. And we've always said in the past, Anthony, how they try and mimic nature. They want to copy the perfect working model that is there. And they're literally now trying to raise their robots from the ground like children.
Yeah, it's a counterfeit. That's all they're doing. They can't create anything. They're counterfeiting everything that God created. And I'll tell you, I just take it in stride. Just take it in stride. All this stuff that they're doing today, that they're playing games with. But I'll tell you what, it's only going to come down harder on them. It's only going to come down harder. I'll tell you what God is doing right now in shorthand, and I'm going to explain more of this in our forum, September 16th and 17th. We're going to do a live stream online forum. But what I'm telling you right now in shorthand, it'll be explained then in more greater detail, is that God is equipping his people, those that are truly saved. If you want to look at the technology that's being developed, quantum computers, DNA, particle physics, you want to look at all the things that Satan is doing through science to advance their agenda. God is well ahead of that agenda with his own plan. In fact, their agenda fits into his bigger plan because he's always in control and knows everything. There is nothing that they have that is encrypted that God cannot decipher. God is going to, and already is, taking his own people, those that are truly saved, and he is augmenting, he is transmuting, if you will, transforming, if you will, people in the Holy Spirit to always be a step ahead of Satan and his agenda. And I won't elaborate on it here right now on the moment, but this is why there should be no fear from you as believers and myself, because they can play their games and they can harass, but they will never, ever defeat God, the Holy Spirit. They cannot kill God. And you know, Kev, I have said this for years now, that his agenda has always been to kill God and his angels. Well, God's got a big surprise for him. So go ahead. I'm a little distracted on what we were going to talk about, but I got to hit him.
I was on with Bill Bean last night, and this story is relevant again tonight with you saying that, because the Express was reporting how scientists are now saying that there's absolutely no proof in the Bible whatsoever that the devil was a bad guy. And all you Christians and Christians worldwide, everyone's got it wrong, Tony. Everyone, because Satan is in fact the good guy.
Yeah, well, that's what they think.
Scientists actually coming out and now publishing this in the mainstream. This is the times we're living.
Yeah, it is absurd. It really is. And you know what? God's laughing at these people. They think that they are so in control and that they've got all the answers and all this other nonsense. This priesthood of science believes that they've got all the answers and that they actually can encrypt things, as we said on Monday, or on Wednesday, that, they can hide their communications, they can hide their plans from God. Well, all you got to do is read the Bible, folks. Okay, it's pretty simple. Go ahead, Kev. I'm going to let you elaborate a little more on Kindred, and we're going to come up in about 4 minutes where we're going to shift gears into another form of necromancy.
I'm going to get Anthony Patch's thoughts on why Geordie chose to mention our kind of conspiracy. And it's not our conspiracy. Well, it was, because it was your video and my thumbnail and the Freaky Friday crew that done the show. But out of all the things he could have spoken about, Tony, I mean, this is a room full of his peers. He's the main man. He's presenting what is undoubtedly an absolutely amazing piece of kit in the D-Wave. But he decides to bring up the conspiracy with Mandela. Are you kidding me? What's your thoughts, Tony? Come on.
Well, I think, again, it goes back to predictive programming. He knows that there's a movie coming out about the Mandela Effect that's going to go mainstream. All of a sudden, people are all over the place are going to go, oh, what's the Mandela Effect? As my friend Rose knows, likes to say, instead of Joe Sixpack, the average guy on the street who doesn't know any of this conspiracy stuff, she calls that individual Joe Bag of Donuts. And I kind of like that. It's kind of cute. But Joe Bag of Donuts out there, he doesn't know anything about the Mandela Effect until he goes to the movies or he hears about it from his buddies. All of a sudden, everybody's seeing the Mandela Effect everywhere. Okay?
That's why I think he didn't bring up an example of what a Mandela Effect was. He just kind of vaguely glossed over the top, and then he launches into his Kindred AI.
You got it, baby. Exactly. And he didn't want to give it more credit, more due than it should. But the fact that a guy of his stature would even mention something that's in the, the alternative media world, well, what it means is you and I, Kev, have been drilling down into all this research we've been doing on D-Wave, and we have exposed it for what it is. And they're afraid of it. And so they have to debunk it. So they could have picked anybody in alternative media. But they picked us because we are the ones that have done the definitive study. And we have drilled it all the way down to the spin of quantum particles to explain the Mandela Effect. And the bigger example is that it is a psychological operation. So those of you that have never heard of the Mandela Effect, go back and listen to in the archives at TFR and on YouTube with Kev's channel and my channel. And we explain the whole thing. And I know that we have the definitive explanation for the Mandela Effect in the world of quantum computing and how it manifests as a psychological operation. Nothing physically has changed, folks. It is all a manipulation of our minds.
I'm just picturing him, just an image in my head of him and Easy Eric sitting there listening to Freaky Friday with their onesies on, Tony. And then maybe going on to YouTube and thinking, right, let's type in D-Wave, our creation. And their egos take a massive kick in because even if you type D-Wave into the Google search engines, and especially YouTube, I'm afraid Geordie and Eric are having to scroll down the list because you would think that we've created this damn thing.
I know it really is funny, but people are listening to us because we legitimately present the truth. If it's conjecture, if it's hyperbole, we say it is. And then we put it on Freaky Friday. So if you listen after this show to Freaky Friday, you'll hear some of that stuff. But on this show, we call it what it is. If it's conjecture, we say it is. If we say it's from the research papers, if it's from particle physics, if it's from the hard research of DNA, we tell you it is. Go ahead, my friend.
We'll be back after the break, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to tonight's broadcast of the Anthony Patch Show with Anthony Patch and me, his co-host, Kev Baker. Now, if you were rocking out to that music there, and I suspect you were, a massive thanks to Robbie and Cheryl Spencer for putting that together. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Now, before we launch back into this tonight, don't forget, like Hawkins said during the break, and I don't know why he's not been sacked yet. I'll need to deal with that. Freaky Friday is coming up right after Tony's show. Doesn't end there on a Friday because Chris and Cherie Geo go live right after Freaky Friday. And a massive big shout out to Brent Thomas, one of our fellow hosts right here on the network, because tonight on the Paranormal Portal, it is episode number 100. So I urge you all to sit back, relax. Hope you've got munchies, popcorn, whatever it is you've got there. Long night of radio ahead of you. And tonight we were covering D-Wave in particular, one of their founders, Geordie Rose. He acknowledged the fact that he listens to Freaky Friday, and in particular Anthony Patch. He's playing about with Patch's Skype. We know the game that's afoot here. But he has moved on to a new company now, and it is called Kindred AI. You can find their website at kindred.ai. And I posted a number of pictures in the chat, and the first one is of their logo. Quite a simple logo. It's just a circle when you go to their website. However, in the video in question, where it's got our video thumbnail on the wall behind him as he's speaking at this Vancouver conference, he's got a different kind of logo above the Kindred writing. And Anthony, I kind of came to you on this one because you are more of an expert on this kind of stuff than I am, but this is more like the snake eating its own tail, isn't it?
Yeah, the snake is the dragon. The dragon is the spirit of Satan. So this is literally they're acknowledging their worship of Lucifer. I will take the Ouroboros, which is what the snake represents eating its own tail, and I'm going to read from Wikipedia. I don't care what people think about Wikipedia. I think it's a reasonable definition. The Ouroboros is Greek. It's an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon eating its own tail, originating in ancient Egyptian iconography. Thank you very much. I can't talk today. The Ouroboros entered Western tradition via Greek magical tradition and was adopted as a symbol of Gnosticism and Hermeticism, and most notably in alchemy. Via medieval alchemical tradition, the symbol entered Renaissance magic and modern symbolism, often taken to symbolize introspection, the eternal return, or cyclicity, and especially in the sense of something constantly, emphasis here please, constantly recreating itself. It also represents the infinite cycle of nature's endless creation and destruction, life and death. Now, the reason that I'm highlighting recreating itself constantly, go back to what Kev and I have talked about with the Boltzmann machine, related to D-Wave, and D-Wave changing the paradigm within their own company of moving from strictly combinatorial programming, call it linear algorithms, to recursive neural network, infinite cycle, nature's endless creation and destruction, life and death. This is the recursive neural network Boltzmann machine, deep machine learning of AI. They are using the Ouroboros to tell you that the machine is teaching itself, constantly recreating creating itself. This is the new programming paradigm at D-Wave. It is also applied with Kindred. Kindred is about the application of D-Wave's quantum computing processes of deep machine learning to the AI operation of the robots that Kindred is building. They are literally trying to build a counterfeit human brain to replace the human brain and place it within their robots. They want a computer brain that is more powerful than the robots. Now, Kev, you and I talked about this briefly before the show, and I'd like you to talk about where they want to go with those brains in terms of what they think they can achieve in these robots with those brains. But the Ouroboros is right out of Hermeticism. This is right out of the Tablet of Hermes. This is the green emeralds of the Tablet of Hermes, which was prescribed with the key to immortality. So, Kev, go ahead and talk about what they think they can achieve with this new brain that they want to put into these robots, where it's going to.
And, you know, even before we get to that, Tony, I mean, think about this eclipse that's coming up. I mean, the sign in the sky is going to be the same as what Geordie Rose is wearing on his shirt, because when the moon blanks out the actual sun, there's that slight disc that goes around the outside of it. And again, it's the same thing. It's the the snake eating its own tail. So
right.
Well, they talk about signs in the sky and timing with everything. But, you know, what we're talking about here is we often speak about how Eric Ladzinski, the other guy who created D-Wave, he literally modeled his computer on how the human brain is constructed and how it works. And now they're taking it that step further, because they're actually taking it out into the real world and mimicking how us humans grow up, how we learn to perceive the world. They said themselves it's going to be covered in sensors, in cameras, in microphones. So it's going to be hearing the world around it, seeing it, observing all of us. And they honestly think that the closer they can mimic the, how would you say it, the rearing of this robot to a child, then the more likely they are to attain consciousness. I find this actually, I don't know whether it's a pretty cool idea or utterly ridiculous, Tony, because I don't think letting a robot grow up the same way as a child does is any way, shape or form going to take it to being cognitive, a human-like machine.
No, simply because God will not allow that. And even though they can mimic utilizing wires and metal and electrons and qubits, and they can go ahead and program it using self-learning, deep machine learning of the Boltzmann machine, they can do all of that to counterfeit as close as they think they can to God's creation of the human brain. And the human brain actually is derived from our DNA. And they have tried to go in silico to the basic building blocks of DNA and model in the computer their own construct, their own model, their own pattern of DNA sequencing to create their own counterfeit version of human 2.0, and that DNA resulting in a biological brain that will function as a warm and wet qubit human brain, but a counterfeit of the human brain as a quantum computer. Because naturally, as God created our brains, we do have a biological version of a quantum computer. They want to take their D-Wave processes and merge them into a biological construct, which I have presented in the first issue of Entangled magazine, the article entitled Warm and Wet Qubits. I lay it all out, how they want to build qubits from chemicals, because our human brain is nothing more than a chemical computer. They want to mimic that. So it is not so much that it's going to continue to be a qubit-driven machine that is built of metal and niobium and gold, but it is actually evolving to use their parlance, into a biological quantum computer. But it will never achieve human consciousness because that only comes from God. Consciousness in the pure form, in the original form, can only be created. All they can do is create a counterfeit, but it will never achieve human consciousness. And even if they want to redefine consciousness, as you told me, Kev, before the show, they can do a Mandela effect on the definition of consciousness. And they can change the color of consciousness, if you want to put it that way, to their own definition of consciousness, to match their own counterfeit model, and to downgrade, to say that now the human form of consciousness is irrelevant because it is at the level of a house pet. Sound familiar?
Well, I think what they're going to say, Tony, is, and this is just my speculation here, but I think they're going to say that our consciousness comes from an outside source, some kind of energetic field maybe that's in the universe. And I say that because that way then, when they build their robots, this Kindred AI, they can claim that they too are conscious because they are able to receive that same energy from that same source because they are so human-like. It's grown up like the human. It's perceived the world. It's got the same knowledge. It's done it the same way. And that's enabled it to receive this same consciousness. But you can build on this theory more, right? Because the hive mind that they want to take us into, all they have to do is show us proof of that and call that consciousness. We all come from that source. And that way, they just roll it out. Neural lace, bada bing, bada boom, third strand of DNA. We're all in their matrix.
Yeah, and they're going to sell it as a better reality, a new form of life, that if you would like to have the enhancements, the augmentations, the transformations that come from modern science, because the priesthood of science is saying these are all wonderful things. And unless you want to be rendered to a serf class, you need to take the mark of the beast, you need to be plugged into the system, and you can then enjoy all of these wonderful advancements in science that they're going to say, no cancer, no hunger, no death. All you got to do is upload your consciousness, whatever that is, your memories, into this new warm and wet biological qubit-driven quantum computer brain that they're trying to put together. But even those things that they are saying that are wonderful advancements in the human race will be for a select few. Truly, the rest of the people that will plug into this system, who are not part of, let's say, the elite, the upper crust, the people, in the priesthood, they will be rendered as the serf class slaves. They will not enjoy the, quote, benefits. But guess what, guys, up there in the elite and the Geordie Roses of the world, and now Jeff Bezos just been cited 2 days ago as the richest man in the world, surpassing Bill Gates himself. You guys are going to find yourself in your own prison of your own design, of your own making. You will be imprisoned. You will not enjoy any of these advancements that you're trying to push on humanity, because your own advancements, your own technology is doing nothing but putting the bars up and the door and the lock to your prison cell. The joke is on you guys. Now, I'm standing as judge and jury right here. I am not your executioner, however. That is for God himself. Jesus Christ is coming back as a roaring lion. He's coming back with the sword of judgment. And he's coming back very soon. And you guys know it. That's why you're pushing your agenda so quickly. You know that you have but a short time. And it is a race to try to push the technology so fast and so far as to somehow avoid death and avoid God's judgment. The joke is on you guys, because Jesus Christ is coming back and he's going to deal with you guys. So I'm standing in judgment, but I'm also praying for your souls. You still have time to turn to Jesus Christ. If you don't, you will be locked away, and that is in hell. And that is what is staring you right in the face. But if you want to play with the Ouroboros, if you want to run around like you're some kind of a priest or you're some kind of a warlock even, because when I look at these guys in their eyes, I see warlocks, and I'm calling you out because that's exactly what you are. Go ahead, Kev.
Now, Tony, I was going to get your take on this upcoming eclipse, because I think this ties into all of this as well, because it's a sign of the times, like I said earlier on, and it does feel like things are escalating right now. And I see a lot of talk on the internet, and we even shared a story about how it's going to lead to a zombie apocalypse with people all heading out to see these things. But do you see this being a sign of something to come in the months ahead?
This is a harbinger. This is a warning to the Gentiles, not to the Jews, but to the Gentiles. That's all of us that are, not of the Jewish religion. But I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole of discussion. But what I am going to say is that for the unsaved, you better pay attention to God's signs in the heavens, because this eclipse is a harbinger, as a final warning. He's saying, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. This comes just on the heels of September 23rd. Read Revelation 12. The sign in the sky there goes back to the Ouroboros, goes back to the dragon tail. The dragon is Satan, Lucifer. The Antichrist spirit is being born September 23rd. The dragon, the great red dragon in Revelation 12, gathers up in his tail the third of the angels. These are the fallen angels from heaven, and casts them to the earth. Those are the spirits that are being cast to the earth. Now, I'm not saying definitively anything physically is going to be observable on the 23rd of September, but it is a spiritual date to be marked by the harbinger of the 21st of August full eclipse. Think of it as you will, take it as you will. That's my interpretation of it. I would say get into the Bible, get into the Word, and let the Lord speak to you, and He will reveal to you what you need to know. Go ahead.
So does this pass over where you are, Tony? Are you going to get to see this?
Am I going to see the eclipse?
Yeah.
My recommendation is to stay inside, close your blinds, do not observe it, and let it pass by. And there are a number of spiritual and electromagnetic reasons that I say that. I say shelter in place, do not participate in this. And also there are millions of people in the United States that are traveling to the central states where the path of the shadow will be passing from the west coast to the east coast. And I'd say don't get on the roads, don't fly in the aircraft, do not participate, do not get in the shadow itself when you're outdoors. Now, this sounds really stupid to hear myself say this, and plenty of naysayers out there will say, well, he's lost his mind. I'm telling you from what the Holy Spirit is imparting on me, and that is do not participate in any way outdoors with this eclipse. It is a bad omen. Go ahead.
Well, they are telling people, don't be surprised if there's some disruptions with your mobile network, stuff like that. And I believe Portland, Tony, they're having their annual Cascadia kind of drills running at the same time. They're telling people to just be ready in case something does happen. And like you say, with all these people heading into areas, it's going to be an absolute nightmare logistically. But, I mean, if you're saying stay inside, if I was over there, then I'd certainly be hunkering down, Tony.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything to stay inside, for the few minutes that it's going to be, full. The full eclipse will be passing by your own area. But even outside the area of the shadow itself, I don't think it's a good thing to be outside. Look at what is already going on. Let me just give you a very practical, tangible example. We have all of the aerosolized spraying, all the chemtrail spraying that's going on. And we've had Dane Wigington on, who did a great job, and also Alana Freeland, who did an equally great job explaining all of that. We have extremely high levels of UV radiation going on. All you got to do is walk outside and you feel like your skin is being pinpricked because of the UV levels out there. I recommend people that are, going to the beach or whatever and laying out in the sun, don't do it. All you're doing is setting yourself up for skin cancer. Well, the fact that the UV levels are already raised, they will also increase during this eclipse. So there's a tangible reason if you need it for staying indoors.
Even over here in Scotland, I can totally appreciate what you're saying because, like I was joking with you, we've had 2 or 3 days of summer this year. And every time I've sat out the back, I've got a lot of time on my hands now, so I sit outside, read my magazine, etc., get some fresh air. I used to love sitting out there for hours on end, but you're right, Tony. Now you can feel it, actually. It is like pinpricks. And I've heard that said before, not just by you. I think it was Stan Dale and others. They were saying if you feel that is UV that is actually hitting you. It's not just the heat, it's the actual wavelength of the light that's penetrating your skin. And it's that dangerous one. So absolutely, and I'm sure everyone out there is nodding away with me because it is, the sun's changing. Used to be yellow, now it's a silver disc in the sky. I mean, I know stars go through cycles. We've got all that crap up in the sky, but that must be throwing off different particles our way, Tony, right?
Yeah, definitely. I had a question posed to me a few days ago from the Rose Nose on that question about the particles from the sun. We have charged particles. We have obviously photons that make up light, but we have not only photons, but protons and electrons. There are gamma rays and there are X-rays. And we have other wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum that bombard us all the time. Fortunately, we have our atmosphere that operates somewhat as a shield. We have the electromagnetic shields around the planet, the magnetosphere, the magnetopause. All of these are under assault. Our shields are all under assault, which means that we have more energized particles that are impacting us, along with the energy waves in the form of UV and X-rays and gamma rays. What I'm really trying to get across here is that with the advent of this eclipse, we now have a heightened grouping or increased grouping of gamma rays and X-rays and ultraviolet rays that will be able to penetrate in higher concentrations. And therefore, it will contribute, as a simple example, to an increase in skin cancer. Certainly, anybody who is going out there and not protecting their eyes, that's a given that you should wear proper eye protection when you try to observe the eclipse. But you really should never directly, I don't care if you're wearing welding goggles, you should not observe directly with your eyes because of the risk of corneal damage and retinal damage that can be done. We don't really know how much filtration is taking place with our shields that even welding goggles would be enough to protect you, because we don't know what levels are going to occur with this eclipse. Therefore, if you need to observe what's going on, do it indirectly with a piece of cardboard or something to that effect, the old box with the pinhole projecting the image of the shadow on the back of the box. Indirectly is fine, but I won't even be outside. There's no reason to even try to observe this thing. So charged particles are what we're talking about that are striking the Earth in larger quantities now because of the changes in our magnetosphere and the aerosolized spraying, even without the eclipse. This is part of what's happening at the core. The core is absorbing more charged particles than normal over the last many years, and this is contributing to the expansion of the planet, resulting in the tectonic plates separating. Yes, there's plate subduction, but there is also the separating of the plates that's contributing to large earthquakes and sinkhole activity. That's because the planet is expanding like a balloon due to the heating of the core, because more charged particles are hitting the core from the sun. Go ahead.
No, we're almost on the break, Tony. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And, you know, we were quite lucky, I gather, just last week, because there was one of these massive kill shots came off from the sun. This was an absolutely huge eruption. And it just shows you just how random things are when it comes to the sun like that. And it makes you wonder, I've always wondered how we've always been lucky. Nothing like that's hit us. You know, I don't think anything's left to chance after all. But we'll be back after the break, and we'll be getting into necromancy. And we were talking about quantum computers, and it might sound totally two unrelated subjects, but it's not. It just isn't. Just like everything on Anthony Pat's show, the Kev Baker's show, Freaky Friday, the Geos, Lucky, everyone on here, there's a golden thread that connects everything together. So join us after the break, and don't forget, I'll be on Freaky Friday straight after the Anthony Pat show. And then get this, on Monday, Anthony Patch will be with myself and Johnny Whistles on the Kev Baker show. You know, Tony, we're going to have to make sure people aren't getting sick of the sight of us or the sound of us.
Well, 2 hours, baby. You're jacking your show up to 2 hours.
Someday soon, Tony. We'll discuss that someday soon. Join us after the break.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All right. Well, thank you again, Robbie and Cheryl, for the great music. I think we're going to come up with some new ones just to keep things fresh around here, but fantastic creations. And Robbie and Cheryl have been helping me out with the Entangled e-magazine. And they are my publishers. They are the ones that are creating all of the graphics, putting all of the articles that are contributed, not just by myself and Kev Baker, although Kev has 12 articles in the August issue coming up. But we have a number of other people that are contributing, and I want to just say thank you, first off, to those that have participated in the June and July and now in the August issue of Entangled. You can get that through anthonypatch.com. It gives us an opportunity to drill down deep into not only the subjects that Kev and I like to talk about, but also what other people would like to have a public venue to voice their research and their perspectives on things that are going on today. So I really throw that open to encourage people that if you would like to submit your articles to Entangled, please email me at anthonypatch.com through the contact tab, and we will consider your information and try to give you that venue. It also reflects what we have in the works in terms of a forum. You might call it a conference, but we choose and we prefer to call it a forum. This will be an online live stream event September 16th and 17th. And we will be having guest speakers, not just myself, but other people speaking. Kev will be moderating this along with the technical support and making this all happen through Robbie and Cheryl from their headquarters, from their studio. And they will be running that program for us to broadcast literally around the world. We will be presenting Bible scripture in the context, in the framework of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. We chose Sun Tzu because it is so well known to many people. It is well known in the militaries of the world, in their academies, in their war colleges. It is a standard manual of instruction, and we will use that as a framework to talk about not only the battles and the war that we're presently engaged in, but as I said at the opening of the show, as I was literally addressing Geordie Rose personally, this is a spiritual war that we are engaged in. And this is for all the marbles, folks. You all know that we're in the latter days. You know that there's a quickening in your spirit. You know as well as I do that this is spiritual, not so much a physical battlefield. What we will do is not only describe the battlefield and as well identify the enemy, but we are going to present you the weapons, that the Holy Spirit is providing us beyond just the shields of the full armor of God, but the literal weaponry that will be provided to you as the transformation of those that are found in the book of life will begin to undergo. And we are providing solutions, therefore, not just saying these are the end days, not just saying these are prophetic times and look at all the prophecies that are coming to pass. We are providing to you definitive solutions for these times. This is not hyperbole. This is not conjecture. This is coming from the Holy Spirit. This is coming through the Word, and we will speak from the Word as the definitive truth to combat all of this nonsense that is coming out of D-Wave, Kindred, even Amazon. Okay? So the definitive truth is the Word of God, and it is not my interpretation. We will let the Word speak for itself during the Entangled Forum, September 16th and 17th. That'll be available online, live streamed. So we're going to talk about now necromancy. And we need to define that, and I'll do that very quickly. And in the Entangled magazine, I have an article entitled Necromancy, and I break it down, and we're going to review that a little bit. But Kev, I also want you to go ahead, before I get into the definitions, provide the audience with a quick summation of what we covered in your last two shows that has to do with these applications, these bots, these necromancy bots for the smartphones. Take it away.
Absolutely. And, even before that again, necromancy, the first time I ever heard that was, I think it was Christopher Everard with Chris and Cherie Geo. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that word. And here we are today now, taking it so much further. And like Anthony was saying there, we've been talking on the show about these apps that are now popping up. And one in particular is a gentleman who was obviously looking at his dad. He was getting older, and he wanted to find a way of basically digitizing his father for after he had died. Now, he's a programmer. He was working on his own kind of chat AI at the time. And what he'd done was he recorded hours of conversations with his dad. And then after his dad sadly passed away, what he'd done was he built an AI chatbot that literally, he says, was his father. The dad bot, he called it. But it's not a one-off, it's another one as well. We played on the show the other night. It was a girl speaking about how she had digitized her dead friend. Now, the question is, and I'm sure Tony will answer in a second, are these really digital copies of the people that they think they are? Is it really his father that he's talking to? Would you digitize yourself to be stored for after your death? And Tony, this is where we really get into the whole topic of digital necromancy.
Yes, because it's one thing to take the recordings and the written words and enter these into a software application program that operates in a lower level, if you will, of artificial intelligence. And then to have the words and the voice recordings manipulated to mimic a conversation, answers to questions from your dead loved ones. You could just assign it to that level and say that's all it is. But understand that the core foundation to AI comes from the practice of necromancy, the communication with the dead. And there are various forms I'm going to list for you of necromancy. The point is, if the root of the application, literally the algorithms that form the foundation for all AI, is born out of mathematics and a spoken and written language, an alphabet, that is derived from fallen angels. And this is all in the literature. This is all Dee and Kelly and others before them, going all the way back to ancient Egypt, The practices of communicating with the dead have been going on all through humanity. You can look at Native American, you can look at East Indian, you can look at Hindu, Buddhist. All of this is built around communicating with the dead. We see the statue of Shiva outside the headquarters at CERN. That represents communicating with the dead. So we're not making this up. We're presenting to you the factual information. The application, having its roots in communicating with the dead as the actual mathematical algorithms forming artificial intelligence, that means that as soon as the application is loaded into your phone, it is now opening a doorway to the fallen angels, to the realm of the dead. And the first time you open that application, you open the doorway, you allow a spirit to enter the phone. This sounds like ridiculous, mythological, whatever you want to call it. But they believe this, therefore they implement this. And what I mean by this is they know that they are building a software program that allows, through the mathematics of necromancy, allows a doorway to be opened to allow two-way communication with a dead spirit or multiple dead spirits. Therefore, Kev, you are not communicating with your dead loved one. You are communicating with a dead spirit that is counterfeiting your dead loved one.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Even think for people out there, think of ghost hunting and some of the equipment that they use. I mean, they use these kind of meters where they can pick up on energy. And if these entities are in energetic form, this makes perfect sense. I mean, they're detecting these energies around here. And now what Anthony's saying is they're literally, with the technology, they're able to open portals for that energy to utilize. And we've talked about Ouija boards on my show in the past and how there's these tricksters about. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear in an attempt to gain your trust. So what a perfect ruse, what a perfect guise to take on somebody's dead relative. Somebody that obviously people are going to listen to. They're not going to question who it is. And in fact, Tony, I mean, when you look deeper into this, because of the deep neural learning networks and this recursive learning as well, it actually improves all the time. It gets more and more, they say, lifelike, but it becomes more intelligent.
Yeah, it does. And it's that recursive Boltzmann self-learning, self-teaching, learning from its mistakes, but it is very deceptive. They make it look warm and fuzzy. They make it look like, well, I'm communicating with my dead father, okay, as the one example you cited today. The other one was a dead loved one, a boyfriend, which is the one we talked about in the previous show. And so they make it seem like this is okay. This is all right. You're just kind of mimicking your dead loved one, but it really doesn't mean anything spiritually. Well, that's where they're deceived. That's where they're blinded. This is where they just don't understand that we wrestle with spirits, principalities in the air, as it's described in Scripture. We are in a world that is both physical and spiritual because you cannot separate the spiritual from the physical. Both have as much validity and reality in our lives as the other. One and the other are valid and of equal importance, but we are in a spiritual battle. Now, this application will probably go viral. People will adopt it. They'll go after it just like these spinner toys that they think are just toys, when in fact that is nothing more than the crossing of the pencils ritual, Charlie, Charlie, and many others like that. So I'm just saying, Kev Baker and I are putting out the warning to people. Do not download this application. Tell your friends not to download this application because you are opening up things that you do not want to get involved with. If you want to screw up your life, perhaps even to the point of physical death, then that is what will result from playing with opening doorways to the spirit world. And that's all this application is doing. Do not fall for the deception. Go ahead.
You know, just look how people react to Alexa, that little box in the room. You know, it's not modeled on anyone you've ever physically known, but yet there are people out there who absolutely swear that they formed a friendship with it, formed a friendship with an AI. And those things like Alexa and all the other ones that are out there, and Facebook, they're looking to get into this market as well. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but every single person sitting in their homes, having conversations, going about their day-to-day business, they're all teaching those Alexas how to become more intelligent every single day because of that recursive learning, those deep neural networks again.
That is correct. And the reason for all these AI bots on your phones is for teaching the AI, to feed it more data. And these people, we've seen examples, Kev, where they sit there and they interact with this phone AI, which again is a very low-level AI. I want to, emphasize there are multiple levels of AI, but they're saying, in one example, going back to this necromancy bot, the guy says to his dead dad, a spirit that he's communicating with, "Do you love me?" And the spirit dodges it, would not answer with the word love, because it's a demon. It cannot say the word love. It cannot do that. It's a demonic spirit. That is proof right there, proof positive that he's talking to a spirit, and it is not his father. If it was his father would say, or even the algorithm itself would say, in a counterfeit fashion, "Yes, I love you." But even the algorithm could not say that, because it is an algorithm built upon communicating with the dead, and they cannot voice the word love. Now, the other ones that are not necessarily necromancy, but people are saying, they're revealing their most closed secrets. They're confiding with these AIs, things they would not even tell their best friends if they had a friend. I think a lot of these people are lacking in social interaction to begin with. But the more that you tell the AI, the more it learns about you. What is the nefarious aspect to that? The more it knows about you, the more it can control you. Think about blackmail, okay? They can control you with blackmail if they know all your secrets, your personal secrets that you're sharing with it. In the bigger picture of the sentient world simulation, I've said this many times already, but for people that haven't heard it, it is feeding data into the sentient world simulation. It is increasing the density of that data so that the reality that is being created, the digital false reality, the counterfeit reality, becomes more and more realistic as you increase the density of the data, what is called granularity of data. And it will get to the point where the granularity reaches such a density that the data spontaneously converts to matter. And again, I have an article coming up in the August issue of Entangled magazine to give you the details of that conversion to data to matter. The point here is, folks, don't interact with AI, don't feed the machine, don't make it smarter, don't allow it to know more about you, because by denying them the information, you deny them control. Go ahead, Kev.
And it is all about information with the AI. That's the thing that strikes me the most, the more I look into this. And we're feeding it all the time. And with the Internet of Things, it's just going to go like an exponential curve. The amount of data that's going to be fed back to these AIs, and the ones like Geordie Rose is talking about, I mean, these are the ones that factor into the kind of apocalyptic nightmare scenarios, right? We're not talking about Siri on your phone, which is a very narrow AI. That's not the kind of AI we're worried about. It's these artificial general intelligences. And like I was sharing with Tony before the show, quick example, I mean, by 2025, they reckon there'll be more robots in the US military than actual humans when it comes to fighting on the battlefield. And we can see that already with the drones and the kind of stuff that Boston Dynamics are playing about with. But then throw in one of these Boltzmann machine type brains, one of these artificially intelligent brains that Geordie Rose is talking about with Kindred. I mean, that's where the risk comes in for me, Tony. That's your kind of sci-fi worst case scenario right there. And we're seeing the first steps towards it.
We are. And, I'm going to retrace our steps a little bit on the Boltzmann, because you and I first heard this presented by a representative of D-Wave at CERN, at the CERN facility in their conference room. And they said that later on this year, and this is going back now almost 2 months, so I'm expecting the release of their white paper on the Boltzmann machine, their new paradigm of their software operation, to come out any day now. And I hope that we'll be able to get our hands on that, and it's supposed to be a public document. But what we took from that was not only this understanding of deep machine learning, this recursive neural network, we also took the fact that they're presenting this to the researchers at CERN. And there is always this discussion between CERN and D-Wave as it relates to the portal, the opening of the portal. And I'm not going to get into that too much right now because we've covered it extensively. But if you are opening a dimensional portal at the quantum scale and it is going to expand to the macro scale, you have to start with a control mechanism at the quantum scale. That's what D-Wave is. They are operating at the quantum scale with qubits, with interdimensional communications, and therefore they will be the mechanism to control the opening of the portal, because it has to be controlled. Otherwise, as Hawking says, it will expand at the speed of light. So enough of that point just on CERN, but there is a direct connection between D-Wave and CERN. The Boltzmann machine is at the core of AI learning. And I'm being repetitive here, but I'm going to launch into the definition of necromancy. But Kev, did you have anything to add before I do that?
No, launch into it, Anthony. Go for it.
Okay, so necromancy. Necro itself means death. Mancy means divination. Okay, that's divining or communicating with spirits. Necromancy, as the word, is communication with the deceased. Now we're going to go into discussing some other forms of communicating with the dead. And necromancy itself is one, and there are several others. And we are going into the forbidden arts, which is the general discussion of communicating with the dead. And this is derived, as I said earlier in the show, from the Emerald Tablets of Hermes. The first one is aeromancy. As the name implies, this is communicating through the air. Chiromancy has to do with time. Hydromancy has to do with water, such as looking in the bowl of water. This is something that, what's his name? Oh, it just evaporated from my head. Anyway, we'll go to the next one. Geomancy, which is using the earth, using the soil to divine information from the spirits. Nostradamus, that's who I was trying to think of. He employed hydromancy, the bowl of water that he would use as a mirror, as a black mirror, to commune with spirits. That was hydromancy. Spatulomancy is essentially using not just spatulas, but other instruments that are dropped on a table or dropped on the ground or arranged on a surface. Think of Charlie with the crossing of the pencils. That is spatulomancy. And of course, the last is necromancy. Now, those are the principal forms that were used in the Hermetic wisdoms of alchemy, astrology, and theurgy. More of that is laid out. We talk about in this article in Entangle magazine about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn from the 19th and 20th centuries with Crowley. The first, second, and third orders of the ciphered manuscripts of the so-called secret chiefs. We go into all of that stuff. All of what we're talking about with D-Wave and CERN and other aspects of science is derived right out of what I just outlined for you. And that includes the Boltzmann machine and its recursive neural network, deep machine learning, that is tapped into these parallel dimensions. What do you want to add to that, Kev?
I'm just sitting here listening to you go into this, Tony, and everything we spoke about over the years, it's all coming together. That's the thing that always blows me away. With every app, these new apps that have come out, they've just added to the whole story, haven't they?
Yeah, and if you know something about history, if the Mandela Effect has not psychologically blotted out the history, the record, and if the books haven't been burned, which we'll talk about after the break, we got about a minute to go. If you know history, then you can learn from it. But if you do not study history, then you are doomed to repeat the failures of history. What we're trying to do is give you a history lesson as to where technology's roots are derived or divined from, the divination. This is what our job is, Kevin, myself, is to do the research, to give you the backstory on all this, because Joe Bag of Donuts out there doesn't know anything about history. And it's our mission to educate Joe Bag of Donuts as to what is going on in this reality, how it is being revised, and what it means in terms of controlling you and your future, and what it means to your soul. Take it away, my friend. You got a few seconds.
Isn't it ironic how I grew up, say, 10 miles from where Aleister Crowley was doing all of this stuff back in the early 1900s? Something inside me tells me there's some kind of universal irony in that. Or it's just one of these connections. It's like the quantum connection. We'll be back after the break with the final segment of tonight's Anthony Patch Show. Don't go anywhere.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kev Baker, and tonight you're tuned into Anthony Patch's show right here on TFRlive.com. We're moving into the last part, unfortunately. Been a great conversation here tonight. Don't forget, check out Anthony's work over at anthonypatch.com. You can find mine over at kevbakershow.com. Check out the e-magazine, Entangled. Get that over at either of our sites. There's links to it there. And before the break, I was sharing kind of the universal irony, I call it, that I grew up in such close proximity to Aleister Crowley. Now, you all know I grew up near Loch Ness, right on the mouth of Loch Ness, and Crowley, well, he bought a place or a property called Boleskine House for a very specific reason. He was looking for a property that was north-facing, secluded, so that he could carry out something called it was a magic kind of ritual from something called the Book of Abramelin. Now, according to his book, Tony, and this is his own words here, the first essential is a house in a more or less secluded situation. There should be a door opening to the north from the room of which you make your oratory. Now, he goes on to describe this property, right? And I've been there, grew up near it. It is perfect for what he was trying to do. And what he was trying to do sounds totally off his head, but if you tie it in with everything we talk about, very, very relevant. He was trying to summon 12 kings and dukes of hell, and he was trying to do it by using something called Enochian magic. Now, this Enochian magic, when I was growing up, I had no idea about any of this stuff, but I can tell you Aleister Crowley was a scary guy that people would basically frighten their kids with if you were being bad or something like that, Tony. Aleister Crowley's going to come and get you. And it worked when you were a young guy. And that's why I find it almost ironic. And maybe I'm on the right path. I was growing up in the right place to go on to connect all of these dots, because here we are now today, and I'm finding out about this Enochian magic, how it connects to the past, John Dee, and more relevant to the stuff I'm into right now, these quantum computers, and how it is all all of it is geared towards communicating with the dead and bringing them back.
It really is. And you got dropped into that. And Crowley, with, we mentioned earlier in my necromancy article, he was playing around with these different levels, and he was communicating. He had 3 different levels in his secret society, and these are actually called orders of the ciphered manuscripts of the so-called secret chiefs. And he sidestepped it. He kind of created his own order within the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set groups, and he really was very full of himself. He didn't want to follow the traditional patterns that people predating him, even Dee and Kelly, had set up. He really set up his own order, and he was really trying to begin the foundation of technology, the foundation of science. He was really trying to bring in modern science into what he had considered to be magic. And he spells magic with a K on the end, by the way, if people hadn't seen that before. But yeah, you were dropped into that area so that I think you were given that awareness of the dark practices. And much like I was dropped into Berkeley, which is where I was born and grew up, and that is just pure satanic worship going on at UC Berkeley, San Francisco, and Oakland, where I worked for 27 years as a paramedic and saw literally hands-on the practice of demonic worship within Oakland and Berkeley and even in San Francisco. So you and I were given a stepping stone, so to speak, into these dark areas without becoming part of it. And we became aware of it. And I believe that that is what God was trying to do in both our lives, was to make us aware that this reality is a false reality. It is a reality that is manipulated by Satan. And this world is Satan's world. And we are not to be a part of this world. We are to be separate from this world. And it is giving up our lives, giving up our connections with this world that then allows us to be reborn, to be rebuilt. And I think because of the areas that you grew up in and that I grew up in, we were given that heightened spiritual awareness that is necessary to understand that we need to be separated from this occult world, if you will. Go ahead.
Just look at these Hollywood cats today. I mean, all the famous ones. I mean, Aleister Crowley, they absolutely, they worship this guy. You've got Jay-Z. He's got his line of clothing with "Do What Thou Wilt." That's plastered all over it. Obviously taken from Aleister Crowley and his Book of the Law. And then I remember when Peaches Geldof, when she passed away, a young star over here, Bob Geldof's daughter, I think it was a drug overdose. And there was a story about her. And in the background, Tony, it was a full bookshelf and like a library of all of Crowley's works. And it just shows how they almost pay homage to this guy from the early 1900s. And we know what he was into. And it just, again, serves as the evidence. Remember, we had David Heavener saying that basically Hollywood, modern Hollywood, it's done a deal with the Antichrist. It's dark. It's evil.
Yeah. Well, this is Kabbalistic practices. All of these are Kabbalistic practices. And, you know, this all ties into why Hollywood grew as it did, because it was based upon these Kabbalistic practices of spiritually manipulating people through images. And that is another form of necromancy. When we are watching predictive programming in the form of movies, television, and commercials, these are necromantic practices. These, you know, people want to just write it off as predictive programming. You have to look deeper. Again, you have to look at the roots of these things. Hollywood is all about Kabbalistic practices. That's what they believe in. Therefore, that is what they produce. Now, I'm going to give you some examples that people, some names that are, you know, pretty well known to most people. There was a movie made about John Nash, and it was called The Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe. John Nash introduced the Nash equilibrium, and that had to do with economics. It had to do with the marketplace and even the stock market. But he admitted he was in communication with aliens, as he described it. in communication with aliens, assisting him in his higher math. Now, I cannot pronounce the next guy's name, but there was a gentleman from East India who was credited, he credited his own revelations of complex mathematics. Again, I cannot pronounce the goddess's name. You'll have to read it in my article or go search it out yourself. But he was saying that his complex mathematics was due to receiving visions of scrolls of mathematical equations. Literally, he saw them as living entities, these equations, and he would write them furiously in the ground and then on paper. Okay, so that is another form of geomancy, writing in the soil, writing in the ground. Carl Sagan, in his novel Contact, publicly acknowledged higher intelligences were communicating with humans, and himself in particular, through advanced mathematics. This is all about necromancy, folks. None of this is new. Been going on for thousands of years. Go ahead, sir.
No, just listening to you there, some of the characters. I mean, Carl Sagan as well. Unbelievable, Tony. It really is. And I think I've seen a documentary about the actual Indian person you were talking about there. And like you say, they were seeing these equations, and it was like living organisms. They were actually living. They were doing things and hurriedly writing these things down. But I'd never at the time, when I actually first seen that, considered it as a form of necromancy, or as I'm learning now, geomancy.
Yeah, and that's, let me give you another example or two.
Tesla as well, then, because he was speaking to
Yeah, and he openly admitted it, that he was communicating with spirits. But what he was getting a combination of information from the other side, but also he began his research in ancient Egypt. And so a lot of his technology has its roots there. Let me give you another couple of examples. When you have a deck of cards, playing cards, that is a form of necromancy. When you are rolling the dice, that is a form of necromancy. And we don't have time to go into all of that. Again, you can read about it in my magazine, because we just don't have time to go into the details on the air. But I do want to jump quickly and go to the table of contents for Entangled magazine. I just want people to see the breadth of information that we are trying to present to you. And I'm going to run through these. I'm sorry that it's a lot of information I'm downloading to you, but you can listen to the show again and get all of these, or go look at the magazine. Go to my website, anthonypatch.com. Click on the Entangled contents, and you can read all of these. But very quickly, just to give you the scope and scale. CERN, absolute existential threat. Strangelets confirmed. Again, necromancy. Sentient quantum biology. Spooky action at a distance isn't the strangest aspect of our quantum world, written by my good friend Kev Baker. CERN's brain, quantum neuroscience. In silico DNA. Interdimensional communications and sentient world simulation. Imagination in a quantum reality, written by our own Robbie Spencer. Sentient world simulation and mind control. My Name Was Not There, written by Lynn Oz. Encouraging scriptures, huge load of those from Rebecca Gray, right out of our chat room here. She's always with us. The July issue, The Last Evangelist TV show by producer David Avner, who we've had on twice on the Kev Baker Show. AI and Consciousness, The Boltzmann Machine, Google's Deep Mind and AlphaGo, The Truth About Aging and Mind-Controlled Slaves by Elisa, UFO Propulsion Systems, Singularity, a requirement, a question, okay? Directing Technologies to Love by my good friend, artist Federico Vega from Spain. He has another one coming up in the August issue. The Two Witnesses by Tiffany Tuesday. Fearfully and Wonderfully Made by Kathleen Urquhart. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. 369, Tetrahedron, Quantum Entanglement, Singularity, Vacuum in Time. That's all one article. Enlightenment or Clarity. A Week in Peru, Fallen Angel Technology, written by my friend Doug Diamond, who went down to Peru with L.A. Marzulli, a friend of the show here. Order Out of Chaos, ? The Strong Force, Who Stands Alone, by Marianne Gerhardt. Entangled, The Entangled Project by Robbie and Cheryl Spencer, and then More Encouraging Scriptures by Rebecca. That gives you a taste of how much we cover in these issues. And August is going to be huge as well. Kev Baker himself contributing 12 articles to the August issue. I think it's a good value, and I think it's a good read. Go ahead, my friend.
Anything with 12 articles from me in it, Tony, it's got to be worth it, right? Come on.
Sure. Yeah, how does that work out to the dollars of subscription?
I've borrowed the ego tonight. I'm going to take the ego tonight. That's what it is. It's my shop. But no, absolutely. I mean, I do. You all know I read a lot of kind of science, techie magazines, stuff like that. And it's up there with any of the ones that I read. What makes it better, though, is the fact it comes from real people. You get a lot of unique ideas, because I can tell you, Wired, New Scientist, all the rest of them, you start to see a pattern because they all have the same stories. It might be a slightly different slant in it, but at least like TFR, it's real people giving their honest opinions. You might not agree with them all, but that's okay. We're not always going to agree on everything. And I urge anyone to check it out. Absolutely, Tony.
I also want to shout out to Cheryl and Robbie Spencer again, because they're responsible for the artwork for the covers of Entangled magazine. Beautiful, beautiful covers they created for the first two issues. And the August issue is posted on my homepage. And it is also announcing our upcoming forum, September 16th and 17th. And this, again, is folding in the practices of Sun Tzu and the art of war into biblical scripture, and preparing and giving people the solutions for spiritual warfare. There's also a symbol on the cover of Entangled magazine coming up in August. And the symbol that I have presented there is a series of 8 diamonds. These are black diamonds, 2 vertical columns of 4 diamonds apiece. I'm not going to divulge until the conference itself what that series of diamonds represent. I'm only going to tell you that that is a form of communication to those in the know, to those people who already at the highest echelon of the dark occulted secret societies. They know at the top level, and this is beyond 33rd degree of the Masonic order. That symbol, I will reveal what populus, Populus, means. It is mind-blowing. This is something that was just revealed to myself a few days ago by the Holy Spirit. I mentioned playing cards. You might think of playing cards because of the relation to communicating with the dead. But it's more than that. And this is a very serious thing that I'm laying out for the audience right now. That we will present exactly what that means, and you have never, at least to my knowledge, in public, ever heard what these 8 diamonds represent. And we'll lay it all out for you. But the guys that are in the know at the top echelon of the secret societies, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll tell you, it's just like I opened the show with, Kev. This should put the fear of God in their demonic spirits. What this means.
And we know they're watching. We know they're watching now, Tony. We absolutely know they're watching and listening, because Geordie Rose has proven that. And for anyone who's just joining the show, the guy we always talk about, the D-Wave dude, you know him. You've seen the video back in 2013, I think it is. He's talking about standing at altars to alien gods and if you listen closely, it's got a heartbeat. That's him. Well, his latest conference, he addressed what he calls the crazy conspiracy theory of the Mandela Effect being attributed to his D-Wave. And in the background, over his shoulder, they've only got a Freaky Friday episode with yours truly and Anthony Patch on there as well, and the quantum key to the abyss that he tries to make fun of, Tony. That's my good quirky title, right? You like that?
I love it. And, let's define that. We have only a few minutes left. The doorway to the abyss, the key to the abyss, is breaking the encrypted 4096 algorithm. That's Peter Shor's. Peter Shor had the RSA, the basis for RSA encryption around the world is Peter Shor's algorithm 2048 and 4096. 4096 is the key to breaking the cryptological encoded information that you find in Revelation 9, where the angel is cast from heaven to the earth and is given the key to the abyss. That is a secret code that requires a quantum computer to break, and it takes a quantum computer that has 4,096 qubits, 4096. D-Wave in January sold the 2000Q. It is actually a 2048 chipset. Geordie, I know what I'm talking about. Okay? It's the 2048 chipset. They sold it as the 2000Q. The next chipset is the 4096. They will sell it as the 4000. I understand your process. It is called the Rose's Law. The doubling of the number of qubits on a chipset, not every year, not every 18 months, like with transistors. It is every quarter, based upon my latest information, that every quarter, but I believe it is expanding. It is doubling faster than that. And Geordie, I'm going to tell you right now, let me grab my notes here, Kev, real quick, so I have the numbers.
Can't we call it Ladizinski's law? That sounds cooler.
Nah, it's Rose's Law, the doubling of qubits every quarter. I know. So, Geordie, I know you have 14 models. I know the 14th model has 1,048,576 qubits. I know that all 14 combined and daisy chains, they are all networked together because they have to. Otherwise, they fight with each other in their quantum entangled world. All 14 comprises 2,097,024 qubits. I know you have 14 models. We don't have to worry about Rose's Law and how quickly they're doubling the number of qubits in a given time frame. I know that the 8th model, which is equivalent to the human brain in terms of the number of tubulin dimers in a microtubule within a human neuron, the 8th model has 16,384 qubits, which is the same as the tubulin dimers. Now, we've said all that over and over again. Geordie Rose, Eric Ladizinski, you think I make this stuff up? I read your papers. I watch your public presentations. We've presented this so many times. As you reiterated, Kev, when they talk about it, sounds like a heartbeat, like you're standing at the altar to an alien god. You use those words on purpose. We understand the words. We understand the history of those words. We understand the origin of your words being from the dark arts of communicating with the dead. Now, you can make fun of me and Kev. You can make fun of the Mandela Effect. Go right ahead. We don't care. But the fact that you even cited our work in a public presentation to Tech Vancouver, and it was presented on YouTube, your own words, with your own T-shirt with the Ouroboros on it, and we just tore apart the Ouroboros to show its dark origins, and it's on a black T-shirt, and you have the words crew on the back of your black T-shirt, which says that you're a member of the club in the worship of Lucifer. So, Geordie Rose, we don't make this stuff up. All we do is connect the dots of the information, your own dots. We put it all together.
And everyone remembers the picture of the crazy-looking scientist who looks like Santa sitting at CERN, and he's sitting there with his Mandela 0 and his Bond 1 sign. Well, we covered the fact that that Bond, again, they're just laughing at you because they think that people don't know. That relates to Monte Carlo combinatorial mathematics. Now, the Monte Carlo bit's the important thing because James Bond, Monte Carlo. Well, this Boltzmann machine that D-Wave were presenting at CERN, you go onto their wiki page about that to find out all about the Boltzmann. And what's it using? The very same Monte Carlo math. And that's why, for me, this absolutely is the icing on the cake, with Geordie actually referencing us as well. We know we're onto the right thing here.
Yeah, otherwise they wouldn't even mention us. And you know, we're blowing our own trumpet here, folks. But you know what? If they call us out, if they mark us specifically, not just saying Mandela Effect because it's all over YouTube, but they actually go to Anthony Patch and Kev Baker and cite us as the ones that are talking about D-Wave, that means that we have drilled down and we've hit a nerve, that we know what we're talking about. So they have to go after the most definitive, truthful source of information and try to attack it and try to debunk it. That's why they targeted us, Kev, because they know we're speaking the truth. We know from the technical side, we know what we're talking about. And really, there isn't anybody else out there except the Kev Baker and Anthony Patch team that has done the hard work, spent the endless hours of drilling down and finding out what the real mechanisms of D-Wave are all about, both from the physical, from the literally particle physics aspect of it, to the spiritual aspects of it, because you cannot separate the physical from the spiritual. And they will deny the spiritual aspect of it all day long. But we are telling you the truth here. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And it's all about the truth. I've had a brilliant night again tonight, Anthony. We're almost out of time. I'll give the last word to you, sir, because I'll be jumping over the break onto Freaky Friday. I'm a man of many hats, right?
Yes, you are. You're a funny guy. Put on your sombrero and go out there, okay?
I will do. I was going to wear a D-Wave for a hat, but over to you, Tony.
I want to thank you, Kev. You've been with me as my partner in this. We've been targeted. We don't care. The Holy Spirit protects both of us. And I want to thank everybody who listens to us. This is for you folks. It is not for me and Kev Baker. We are simply trying to save souls. That's the bottom line. We are trying to save souls. All right. God bless. And stay tuned for Freaky Friday. This is Anthony Patch. Good evening.
Angels with the dead to obtain information. And that has to do with mathematics and geometric shapes. The advanced form of that from the late 1500s to the present is all about D-Waves, quantum computers accessing parallel dimensions into near infinity at this point in terms of the number of parallel dimensions. Again, utilizing Geordie Rose's own words from 2013, at that time, 2 to the 500th power of parallel dimensions, extracting resources, and they also have admitted openly that they realize from these other dimensions 10% more power, more energy entering our reality from these parallel dimensions. By their own statements, all I'm doing, all Kev is doing, is reflecting their own statements, their own admonitions, their own technical explanations of how their computers operate. Now, Kev, you go ahead and jump in there. I'm going to try to reboot my computer. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sitting smiling at the thought of Geordie Rose sitting there, you know, with his slippers on, listening to Freaky Friday, and Anthony Patch talking about his machine. But all joking aside, when I play this clip, he doesn't deny the fact that all of these other dimensions are there. No. He merely says we took his idea and we ran with it. So you're not here to listen to me. Let's listen to the man himself. And remember, it was him that said it was like standing at an altar to an alien god. Standing by his D-Wave, you can hear a heartbeat inside it. Well, this is what he said, like Anthony said, at a recent presentation to all his peers in Vancouver.
So my previous company was D-Wave. I'll just show you a couple things. We built what are still the world's only quantum computers that you can buy. And the company D-Wave has been doing this. Thanks. I didn't really have much to do with it, but so this is one of them. This is one of the processors. And a lot of interesting things happened to me over the years there. I got sent pajamas, a whole bunch of stuff. There's lots of interesting things that happen when you build something like a quantum computer. But just as an aside, because I thought it was funny, one of the interesting things that's happened from the D-Wave story is there's this gigantic conspiracy that's arisen on the internet that goes like this. So D-Wave builds quantum computers. The way that they work, if you know how this works, is one of the interpretations is that you tap into these parallel universes and they do computations. Sounds really weird. But
so if people will go to Down the Rabbit Hole, they'll see the original video. We are going to play the audio today. Geordie Rose posted Kev Baker's graphic of myself and Kev Baker talking about, of all things, the Mandela Effect. And that was a recent show that we did. Geordie Rose, of course, was downplaying it and assigning mine and Kev Baker's presentation on it as conspiracy theory, and they were laughing and joking around about it, which is fine. We have no problem with that. They can try to debunk it all they like, but we've put the information out now since about September of 2015 about the Mandela Effect. And the specific thing, just for people who haven't heard it, Kev and I have determined that Geordie Rose's own statement back in 2013 that they were accessing 2 to the 500th power of parallel dimensions with their Model 512 computer back then, and that they were extracting resources, as he put it, from these parallel dimensions. The resources I have assigned as quantum pollution, manifesting as the Mandela Effect, specifically as a psychological operation operating from the sentient world simulation that is in parallel development to D-Wave's own computers in terms of progression of the number of qubits, therefore the progression of model numbers of their computers moved lockstep with the initiation and further development of the sentient world simulation coming out of Purdue University. The point here, folks, is that we have been acknowledged, Kev Baker and myself, by none other than Geordie Rose, founder of D-Wave, and his new company, Kindred, which Kev is going to explain in a few minutes to you as I attempt to reboot my computer. We have risen to the top of the radar screen, if you will. There's a nice big blip that says Kev Baker and Anthony Patch and the Mandela Effect. We do attribute it to D-Wave Computers activities, which is nothing more than an advanced form of necromancy. And today we are going to talk about not only necromancy, but other forms of communicating with the dead. But essentially, that is a replication of the Dee and Kelly communications with fallen angels utilizing a alphabet, a numerical language, a spoken and computational process of communicating with the fallen angels.
What's happened is this idea has been hijacked to describe something called the Mandela Effect, which is this thing where the past changes. So think about something you know to be true from the past. And then imagine you went out on the internet and you can't find it at all. It's not there. It doesn't match with your experience. So these people think that D-Wave is responsible, and CERN. And of course, the quantum key to the abyss factors into it somehow. I'm not exactly sure how.
Because I titled it that way, Geordie. That's how it factors into it. But, there he is, bigging up his achievements. And they are great scientific achievements, what he has done in the past with D-Wave. Did he choose to speak about the fact that they've got 2,048 qubits working together, going to other dimensions? No. Did he mention the fact that he's got customers like Google, NASA, the NSA, stuff like that? No. Did he highlight any of the achievements he could have? So why on earth would he, in front of all his peers, when talking about D-Wave before moving into a presentation about Kindred, why would he choose to bring up a video featuring Anthony Patch, Freaky Friday, and, as he says, the key to, or the quantum key to the abyss? Did you notice as well how he never explained fully what the Mandela Effect was? And I've got a theory that because he was at the start of his presentation, and he knows fine well this Mandela Effects, whatever they are, they've been experienced by so many people. And if he had brought up mirror, mirror on the wall, I imagine there'd be a percentage of that room would be sitting and they would be having their minds blown. It would have derailed everything he was about to speak about. But why did he choose to bring that up? That in itself should tell you that we are definitely onto something. But like he himself said there, folks, he's not D-Wave anymore. And he even admitted something that I've said all along. When it came to creating the actual quantum computer, I don't know how much of his brain power was used. He was more of the money man. Now he left D-Wave with somebody called Suzanne Gilbert. She's the brains here, and they set up something called Kindred AI. And Kindred AI, their own mission statement from their website, this is enough that's like something out of some kind of sci-fi film, because it says, build machines with human-like intelligence. The company's central thesis is that human-like intelligence requires a human-like body. Since its founding in 2014, Kindred has been exploring and engineering systems that enable robots to understand and participate in our world, with the ultimate goal of enabling a future where intelligent machines work together with people to create abundance shared by all. They're talking about AI-controlled robots. There's a couple of quotes I want to go to here, and basically what they think, or their thinking behind Kindred AI, is that to have one of these artificially general intelligence, not the ones that play AlphaGo or the chatbots that are stored on computers, but an actual artificial general intelligence that's thinking like a human, what they need to do is they need to let it experience the real world. They talk about how humans, we grow up, we're infants, we're taking in through our senses, sight, smell, sound, stuff like that. And all of that has side effects. And this is not me saying this is Geordie Rose again, because he says the side effects of growing up in the real world are what make us conscious and cognitive. So that is the idea here. They're building robots at their company that will go out into the real world. There's one right now called the Orb. It's contained within a hexagonal structure, and it's just like one of these mechanical arms, right? But when it sits in the warehouse with all the other human workers around it, it's got cameras and sensors on it. It's got microphones and stuff like that. And it's learning all the time by watching the other employees in the warehouse while it's doing its tasks itself. Now, Tony, we spoke about this just before the show. I mean, this company, this is, for me, just as important as the D-Wave is, because this is the next step on, isn't it?
It really is, and I'm going to let you elaborate on that. The Kindred, people will understand that comes from biblical scripture, kindred spirits. So that is a starting point, is an acknowledgement, is a confirmation that they are practicing necromancy, that they are communicating with the dead. And there are many forms of necromancy, and we'll go into that after the first break. If you go to my Entangled magazine, the June and July issues, we talk about necromancy in Entangled magazine. And we'll review a little bit of that on the show later on. But Kindred has everything to do with obtaining information from the other side, forbidden information, information that we were never intended to be privy to. So, Kev, go ahead. I'm still playing with the computer. I want to tell you one thing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Anthony Patch Show, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. And you can find us now at our new home web address of tfrlive.com. Big warm welcome to every one of you out there, wherever you're from. We've got an amazing show lined up again tonight. I'm Kev Baker, and of course the man himself is here, Anthony Patch, and we've got so much big news and good news and strange stuff to get into tonight. You're going to be absolutely blown away. So without me taking up too much of your time, let's bring in the man himself. You can find his work over at anthonypatch.com. He's here. He's on the phone. He's Anthony Patch. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Kev. Thank you very much. We were just about to go on air, and they cut my Skype feed, and so we're on the cell phone. Take it away.
Oh, you know, these things happen, Tony. These things happen, but we don't let them deter us. We 180 it, we take it, we smile about it, and we use it to our advantage. At least we're both here tonight, and we've got massive kind of news because we often speak about the D-Wave. You were the man that introduced me to that. And, well, that has come up this week. Tony, you sent me a video, and I want you to tell your audience what has happened, because for me, this is absolutely massive.
Well, we made the headlines with D-Wave, specifically with Kindred. And are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Tony. I'm here.
All right. I'm sorry. They just cut my computer completely. I lost all my power. Kindred, founded by Geordie Rose, actually one of his partners from D-Wave. She founded it, and you have the notes on her name. But Geordie Rose was making a presentation just recently to Tech Vancouver, and this was posted on the YouTube channel Down the Rabbit Hole. And I want to give credit to him because it appears that the original video from Tech Vancouver from their website has been pulled by Tech Vancouver, and I can't find it, and neither can you anywhere else on the internet.